Okay, so let's take a minute and revisit where I left off. I found all of the functions in Excel so I can show them to you. So we need to calculate, as I showed you before, the resultant component for X, the resultant component for Y, the resultant itself, and the angle that it makes. So to do that, for the X component, the function to use is power. And so when you type equals power, you get two terms. It wants to know the number and it wants to know the exponent. So when I typed power, I clicked on the cell over here, F9, and it filled it, and then I put comma 2, and that gave me the exponent. The same thing for the Y resultant component, but this time it was G9, which is the 9, comma 2. So when I did that, then we did this before, we can take our square, we didn't actually, so we can take the square root of the sum of our squares, and it'll be the sum of the square of the two values, X and Y. Okay, so it's gonna, I pointed it right back here to take those square root values and those square values and take the sum and the square root of them. And then the final term to give us our angle, I take the arctangent, which is the same as the inverse tangent of the y component divided by the x component, 9 over 202, and I get the angle associated with this value. So this gives us all of our terms here that we need for the first part of the lab. We created our data, we did our calculations for our components, we created our graph, it's actually not a graph, it's a vector diagram, brought all of our terms into the vector diagram, and then we calculated what our result looked like numerically. So that is the last thing that we need to do to calculate these values. You can go through and calculate the error if you want between the resultant and the vector, and maybe on the next video I'll put that together so that you can at least see what was involved in that before we go on to the 4-vector relationship. So I hope that these have helped you to get a grasp and a feel for doing this in Excel, and you're not too intimidated by it.